If you have a story you'd like to send my way, such as a glitch in the Matrix, please go to astheravendreams.com and click the button to do so. And of course, thank you. I had just recently purchased my house, and my old washer and dryer wouldn't fit. Plus, they sucked, and my wife hated using them. So, she sent me on a mission to buy a new set. I did not do my research, and as I'm standing in the Lowe's appliance department coming to grips with what I'm up against, my contractor neighbor walked up behind me. He helped me pick out the exact units that I was going to purchase. I bought them, and then life got weird for a few minutes. When I got to the truck with my 2 large boxes, there stands my neighbor waiting for me. I thought he was waiting to help me load them, but he just looked at the boxes and said something like, "That's a gas dryer. You don't have gas." I bust his balls for a couple of moments about helping me pick the wrong units out, and it was as normal an interaction as I could have had. I went inside to do the return walk of shame on the items I literally never even left the parking lot with, and my neighbor walked to his truck. I'm at the return counter. The girl behind the register asked me my name. I told her and handed her my receipt from 5 minutes prior while explaining the situation. Without even looking up at me, she says again, "Name?" I tell her my name a second time, and she says nothing while typing into the computer. In comes my neighbor to the return desk with a gallon of paint. He waits in line behind me, saying nothing. The girl behind the register looks up at me and says, "Name, sir?" I tell her my name for the 3rd time, pointing to the receipt on the counter, and try to explain the situation again. And she types into the computer some more, and for what was probably a solid minute, says nothing at all. Another girl at the return desk finishes with another customer and comes over to help. The new girl says to me while they both stare into the computer screen, "Name?" A 4th time, I give them both my name. Without taking their eyes off of the screen, the new girl says, and I kid you not, "I'm sorry, sir, but you don't exist." I got sort of lightheaded after she said that, because I was already thinking how strange this was. I said back, "I don't exist, or I'm not in your system." Without answering me, the second girl says to my neighbor, "Sir, I can help you over here," and moves to the next register as my neighbor walks past me, and without another word to me, returns his paint and walks out the door. Then, almost as if nothing weird had happened, the first girl just says, "Well, here, my name. Here's your return. You'll have to purchase the new ones and we'll refund you for the ones you mistakenly purchased." Without even going back to appliances, there behind me stands a guy with the units that I needed on a dolly, ready to help me buy and load them into my truck. My neighbor was gone, but when I asked him about it, he didn't think there was anything weird about the whole thing. I, on the other hand, had an existential crisis, and I only barely managed to hold it together. Hey Raven, I just wanted to start by saying how much I love your podcast. It's seriously become a highlight of my day, and I always look forward to listening to it. Your storytelling skills are incredible. Thank you very much, Rebecca. Now, let me share this crazy story with you. So, I'm from another country, and every summer my husband, our 4-year-old daughter, and I head overseas to visit my parents. Family time is a big deal for us, and since both my daughter and my mom have birthdays in September, we always plan our summer vacation to coincide with those special occasions. This year was no different. After all the birthday parties were over and just before we were about to head back to the US, we decided to take some epic birthday pictures with the whole family. We set up in my parents' front yard, decked out with balloons and all the festive stuff. We were all posing and snapping away, having a blast. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed this girl in her 20s strolling by with her dog. Now, I gotta tell you, I've never seen this girl before in my life, and I pretty much know everyone in our small town. But hey, I didn't pay much attention, and we went back to capturing those precious moments. As I was focusing on taking individual shots of my daughter, this girl suddenly stops and comes over to us. She asks, "Hey, do you want me to take a group photo of y'all?" Well, I appreciated the offer, but I let her know that we already had plenty of group shots. No harm done, right? I then went back to my task at hand. But here is where it gets weird. She just stood there, still lingering around like she had something else to say. I couldn't quite figure it out. Finally, I turned to her and she asks, "Hey, isn't your husband in the Air Force? Can I ask him some questions?" Now, that caught me off guard. I looked at my husband and he's such a friendly and talkative guy, so he didn't mind at all. They started chatting away and I watched as my parents slowly made their way inside to prepare dinner, with my daughter following closely behind. Now, here's the kicker. As I joined my family inside, my dad tells me that he knows this girl. Apparently, she always asks him about how I'm doing and when I'll come to visit. But get this, I have never, ever seen her before. And let me tell you, our town is pretty small, and we mostly have Caucasian folks around here. But this girl, she's stunning and looks South Asian. So, I'm positive that I would have remembered her. Trying not to dwell on it, I decided to help out with preparing dinner and setting the table. I pushed the weird encounter to the back of my mind, but as we were halfway through our meal, my husband was still outside talking to her. My mom, bless her heart, suggested that we invited her in for dinner. I mean, she seemed nice enough, so I went outside and told them to continue their conversation inside. Turns out, her fiancé is also in the Air Force. And, lately, he's been acting strange. That's why she was bombarding my husband with questions about how to help her fiancé and all that. Once everyone was seated and my husband started eating, the girl turned her attention to me. And here's where it gets even crazier. She starts reminiscing about how we used to walk to the bus stop together when we were around 20 or 21 years old. But here's the thing about that. I always walked to the bus stop alone. I never, ever walked with anyone. Yet she knew all of these details about my job back then and everything. It's like she had insider information on my life. She even knew my name, and that I had moved overseas. I'll be honest, Raven, the whole situation was just plain bizarre. She ended up staying for what felt like an eternity that night, like she didn't want to leave. Meanwhile, deep down, I was desperately hoping that she would get the hint and find her way out. It was such a peculiar and uncomfortable experience, I can't even begin to explain it. Well, after she left, I couldn't stop thinking about the things that she told me. So, I asked my dad about her again. And like he told me before, he sees her all the time out with her dog. He says that she's super nice and always asks about me, making sure that I'm doing well. He told me that she is the daughter of the guy down the street that we always talked about when I still lived there. We talked about him because he never greeted anyone, and he just seemed grumpy. But never did anyone mention a daughter back then, and I also never saw one. Apparently she's even older than me, so she indeed must have lived on our street before I did. I still do not remember ever having met her, and I have a great memory. I even remember details from elementary school, but I can't remember a single thing about her. Never even seen her at a store, a party, or school, and we all went to the same school in town. It's just so bizarre, and it feels like she knows me from a different reality or universe, but I never met her in this one. It's like a glitch in the Matrix or something. So, there you have it, Raven. This is the mind-boggling story that happened to me, and I just had to share it with you. Keep up the amazing work on your podcast, and I hope you find the story as intriguing as I did. If you have any thoughts or questions, let me know, and thanks for being such an awesome storyteller. At the time, I didn't know that this was a glitch in the Matrix. I truly didn't know what it was. I'd seen the film, of course, but that's Hollywood, right? It's not real life. But then again, what is real? Let me set the scene. It was the summer of 2000. I had started my first real job back in December the previous year, and after 6 months or so, I had progressed from general office admin duties to route planning and maintenance scheduling. Pretty mundane stuff, I know, but I was happy and comfortable and already had eyes on a promotion. I worked for a local county council transport service, primarily focusing on the elderly and the infirm. It was Friday lunchtime, and that typically meant depositing a large amount of money at the local bank. I was getting ready to leave when one of the drivers came by to drop off a spare set of keys. The guy was a friendly but subdued character, who, for the purpose of anonymity, we will call Bob. Bob had overheard me telling my manager that I would try and be back within 30 minutes or so. "Hey, want some company?" he said. "My next pickup isn't till 2:30. "Great, you can buy lunch too," I joked. I liked Bob. We got on. He had a troubled home life, and in all honesty, I felt kind of sorry for him. Sadly, I would later find out that he was involved with some questionable characters who had dealings with the occult and witchcraft, and that in and of itself is another story to tell. Back to the bank. And this is where a truly bizarre incident took place. Bob and I entered the bank at precisely 1:05 p.m., the huge digital clock above the cashier's desk glaring down at us. We joined the queue, chatting about music and football. An automated voice announced, "Cashier number 2 available." Only, it wasn't. Stood directly in front of that cashier window was a tall and slender gentleman dressed in a formal pinstriped suit, briefcase, cane, and a hat in tow. His hair was white, like brilliant white, yet he looked no older than 30. He had these mesmerizing green eyes, but they were cold, and his movements were stiff, forced, almost robotic. Bob and I looked at each other, and I suddenly became aware that there was nobody else in the bank apart from us and him. I was sure, no, certain, that there had been several cashier windows full of customers not 30 seconds before. Yet, now, there were none. Bob began to speak when Mr. White, let's call him, banged the tip of his cane on the marble floor 3 times. The noise seemed absurdly loud. Everything seemed loud, yet silent at the same time. I can't make it make sense, it just was. The door behind us chimed. Bob and I automatically turned to see another Mr. White just standing there motionless, staring. They were dressed identically. Same suit, hat, briefcase, cane, the same brilliant white hair, those empty eyes. Both tall, very tall, in fact, yet slender. It was the same person. I could see Bob's head turning and looking back and forth at the two thin men. I saw his mouth open and him say some words, but there was no sound. He pointed, then his eyes widened in horror. Suddenly, that automated voice reminded us of cashier number 2 being available. I turned and the window was free. Mr. White had gone. I spun around, and the other Mr. White was gone. The bank was back to how it was. The usual hustle and bustle, and people making small talk, footsteps sounding on the shiny floor. Bob nudged me. "We need to make this quick. I'm late for Miss Porter." I gazed up at the clock. 2:45 p.m. It couldn't be. But looking at my watch, it was. We had been in that queue for 1 hour and 40 minutes, yet from my perspective, it had been less than 10 minutes. To this day, I don't know what Bob saw that made him look genuinely petrified. He had no recollections of the events inside the bank. No Mr. White, no trying to talk but no sound coming out, no terror at whatever he had seen, just nothing. I returned to work shortly after the bank incident and was accused by my manager of taking liberties due to my then 2-hour absence. Some 23 years later, I still wonder just what had happened on that Friday afternoon. The Mr. Whites were not like you or I. They had vanished. Gone. Was that what had made Bob react the way he did? Did he actually see Mr. White just disappear? Whatever people may think, I do know for certain that we lost over an hour of our lives, which cannot be explained. Bob also lost his memory of any and all interactions with the Mr. Whites. So, was it alien abduction? Was it some kind of form of psychosis? Or was it a genuine, actual, first-hand glitch in the Matrix? You decide. I just want to start by saying that I don't really believe in the supernatural and any of that weird stuff. I've never had any evidence that such things happening in my life personally. But this is just something that I can't explain at all with normal logic. It all started on a normal Tuesday morning. I woke up, got dressed, brushed my teeth, made breakfast, and then headed out the door for work. The commute was the same boring car ride I always have, every single morning. I don't do much outside of work aside from the occasional bike ride around town to get my exercise in, so I'm used to how mundane everything feels. Well, I guess I was used to it. Everything on this particular day just kind of felt off. My car seat didn't feel right. The color of the car itself wasn't the normal navy blue. It felt brighter, more pale. The toast that I made didn't taste right. Maybe that was down to the bread going bad and me not checking before making it, I don't know. But there was definitely something wrong with the immediate world around me. Neighbors outside mowing lawns and walking their dogs. The dogs not being the same kind as I remembered. The golden lab that my neighbor Gary had was seemingly replaced by a small Doberman. Maybe he got a new dog, I told myself. Gary also looked like he'd had dyed his hair blonde. I never knew him to be the type to dye his hair in the 15 years that I've known him. Midlife crisis, maybe? Regardless of all the weird stuff that my brain seemed to be picking up along the way, I got to work without anything making me stop in my tracks. That is until I got to my desk and noticed it was on the other end of the office. I asked one of my coworkers why my desk got moved, and they looked at me confused, stating that it had always been in the far left corner since before I'd started working there. That's what prompted my brain to dial in more closely. Everything around me was a shade too light or too dark, 1 centimeter to the left or right, or was just flat out across the room from where I thought it normally would be. I felt like I was in an episode of The Twilight Zone, albeit a pretty boring and tame one compared to most of those topics. I tried doing my work for the day, just brushing off any inconsistencies I felt along the way. Then I clocked out for lunch. I went to my favorite sandwich shop only to find it closed. Not just closed, though. It appeared old and vacant, like it hadn't been occupied in years. I feel like I got pulled into a different world, one where everything was basically the same but just a little off. I called my boss to let them know that I wasn't feeling well, and that I wouldn't be coming back to work after my lunch break. So, I drove home, ignoring the obvious inconsistencies that I was experiencing. As I'm walking up the steps to my apartment, I saw a woman coming out of it. It was my ex-girlfriend, whom I had broken things off with about a year prior, or thought that I had. "What are you doing here?" I managed to blurt out. A look of confusion and hurt rushed over her face. "I was already out, I just forgot my keys, but are you alright, babe?" she answered. Babe? Not only did my actual ex never call me babe, but even if she did, she wasn't my girlfriend anymore, so she had no reason to be calling me anything. Sorry, just never mind. I'm having a bad day. Where are you going?" I decided to play along to see where this thing went. "To work? It's Monday, you know," she said. "Right, well, just have a good one, I guess," I said through a fake smile. She looked at me for a second, contemplating if she should investigate further, but then she kissed me and left. I stood there for a few minutes, stunned, confused. After all the fights and the pain and the screaming, to feel a kiss from her again was so alien to me, but comforting at the same time. I walked inside and plopped myself on the couch. The room felt like it was spinning. Too much weird for one day. After about 20 minutes, my brain finally had had enough and shut itself down. I awoke about 8 hours later to my dark apartment. I noticed that my girlfriend was nowhere to be found. Instinctively, I called her, and when she picked up, I heard the same deadpan tone I had after we finally said our goodbyes for the last time. I hung up before she could even finish her sentence. The next morning, I did exactly as the previous day, or any other day. Woke up, got dressed, made breakfast, and headed out the door. My car was back to its normal navy blue. The car seat felt like it fit properly again. The toast was even back to normal, and my neighbor Gary was walking his golden lab sporting his usual brown hair. I went about my day, worked at the desk in the far right corner, where it always was, ate at the sandwich shop that hadn't closed down, and after that, I never saw another thing out of the ordinary to speak of. I have no idea what happened to me. My only guess is that I glitched out of my world somehow and ended up in a near identical one, but some things were slightly off. Like the color of my car being a different shade, or an entire painful breakup that seemingly never happened. As a statement to make before I actually read this story, those of you who have been around for a while will probably know who AC Smart is. Specifically, you'll know them by their kleptomaniac philodendron baby. If you know of those stories, then you know who this person is. Anyways, I've had my first glitch since Baby, the kleptomaniac philodendron, dried up 7 years ago. 2 actually. Well, 3, but 2 are related. The simplest one is from just a few months ago. A grocery bag of office supplies, coloring books, etc. I collected to donate to a worthy cause. There was a second bag of DVDs and books. I put both of them in my car in the evening, so I wouldn't have to remember the next morning. I live out in the country, and yes, the doors to get to the garage were locked. But when I got to work in the morning, all that was there was the bag of books and movies. The bag of office supplies was missing, and I haven't been able to find it. It's been months, and I cleared everything out for a long-distance trip, and I scoured the house, but the bag of office supplies has never shown up. Now, the second and the third. Well, remember that long-distance trip that I just mentioned? When I prepared for it last year, I ordered a spare key for my car. I had only received one when I bought the car, and I needed a spare. Long story. Just note, for anyone's future, when you buy a car, before you sign anything, make sure that you have 2 keys for the car. If they don't, make sure they take responsibility for ordering you a second key, or take $300 off the price of the car, because that's how much a key typically costs. So, I ordered a spare key. When I picked it up, it had a yellow plastic tag attached. But here's the thing. When I opened the back pocket of my hip bag to stow the spare key, there was already a spare key, one with a blue plastic tag attached. Okay, I know what you're thinking. I made a mistake. I actually got 2 keys, not 1, when I bought the car. That's possible. I assumed that was what happened. I did show a friend the 3 keys, and they remember them. So the existence of the 3 keys is certain. But that was last year. This year, when I prepared for the trip, I discovered that I still have the spare key with the yellow tag, the one that I purchased. The other spare, however, is missing. Remember, I did show the 3 keys to my friend, so there were 3. Now there are 2. The key that I couldn't account for is missing, gone back to whatever neighboring dimension it came from. But here's the thing. The blue tag from the mystery key is still in the back pocket of my bag. I've never experienced anything like what happened a few hours ago. I was scared at first, but now I'm just baffled. I usually have a pen and an eraser in my bed to write down my dreams in a diary. They're placed beside my pillow. This morning I used them both in my bed, and then as I was done, I brought both the pen, eraser, and diary with me down from my bed. I sleep in a sort of bunk bed, so I have to climb up and down a ladder to reach the mattress. I sat down in my sofa and continued to write in my diary for a bit, and then I placed the items on my sofa table and started to pace around for a while. I clean a little, go to the bathroom, etc. Suddenly, my AirPods run out of battery, and as I remember that I left the case in my bunk bed, I climb up the ladder only to find out that my pen is on my bed. This baffles me, because minutes ago I sat in my sofa writing with that exact pen. The pen moved itself from my sofa several meters up to my mattress in my bunk bed. The pen is a unique pen that I only have 1 copy of. I live alone in my apartment, and I don't have any pets. I'm 100% sure that I didn't grab my pen and throw it up into my bunk bed. That wouldn't make sense, considering I was sitting in my sofa writing things down. I struggle with mental illness, bipolar, but I've never had hallucinations or experienced delusions before. I am healthy and I take my meds. When I grabbed the pen, it was solid. It was in fact in my bed, even though I didn't throw it up onto my bed. Does anyone have an idea of what this could be? Do I have to do something? A part of me is scared, and another part of me is like, it is what it is. Hello, Raven. I've been wanting to submit a story for a while now, but my life's pretty boring, or I just don't notice some things. I've listened to almost every episode on Spotify, so I'm excited to hear my own story in an episode, and I hope that you enjoy. So, I had this necklace with a metal chain and a pink rose quartz crystal that I could hook on to the chain. I forgot where I bought it, but I'd had it for months at this point, with no issues. Eventually, I had broken the chain right where the little clip is, and I couldn't figure out how to fix the necklace, and I wasn't just going to throw it away. I had no other chain that could hold my crystals, so I thought of using superglue to connect the two ends of the chain while the crystal was still hooked onto it. That meant that I couldn't remove the crystal now, but the chain was long enough to just put it right over my head, so I didn't see a problem with it. I definitely underestimated how difficult it would be to hold the two ends still enough until the glue fully dried. So I gave up after a few tries and a lot of glue on my fingers and counter. On to the glitch part. I left the necklace alone for a while, until I was cleaning out my jewelry bowl and found it. When I did, it was fixed. The two ends couldn't have just fused together, right? I asked if anyone in my family had fixed it because they all knew that I was trying, but no one touched it. There's only 3 people in my house: my mom, my dad, and my brother. I really expected my brother to be the one to admit that he had fixed it, but he kept denying it. I don't know if he thought I was upset about it, but I was utterly confused. I couldn't wrap my head around it. The reason I think he felt that way is because I hate it when he touches my things, but I hadn't been rude or angry at all. My brother has autism, so even though I asked him in a confused way, he may still not have been able to tell if I was mad. Despite what I truly think, I believe my brother, and he and everyone else in the house denied touching or fixing the necklace. I can't wait for another episode. I hope that you enjoyed, and I hope that everyone has a spooky night. My reality either underwent a major update, glitched out, or I've slipped into a different reality entirely. It started with noticing a few little things that could be put down to the Mandela effect. I swear that in the reality I grew up in, Worcestershire sauce was spelled Worcestershire, with an H after the C. And it isn't a rare condiment that I only had passing familiarity with. It was a major component of my mom's cooking, and was frequently on the table. I would call it Worcestershire in my head for my whole life, the same way people will think Wednesday when they write Wednesday, even long after they've learned to spell it. I remarked on the spelling change to my husband, and he looked at me like I was an idiot who just didn't know how to spell. Apparently it's Worcester, Massachusetts here too, although even with the CH spelling in my old reality, it was still pronounced Worcester. Those little things made me feel like maybe I was just losing my mind. But the other day, I was sitting at the light at an intersection that I drive through daily, and sometimes several times a day. And I noticed a sign that I had never seen before, and then realized that a different sign was missing. I've lived in this neighborhood for 7 years. There's not much that I haven't seen around here in that time. But I had never seen a faded, weathered white sign on a rusty leaning post that had an arrow directing people to a St. Francis Medical Center. What was there in my reality was a normal blue hospital sign, the kind with the big capital H, with a smaller sign below with an arrow, and the current, and much more unique, name of the facility below that. There have been some more subtle changes in people, places, and things, but I can't really discuss it with anyone I know in real life, because they think I'm half loony already, without telling them something even I wouldn't believe if it weren't happening to me personally. So, here we are. So, my mom is an artist. She has a lot of issues with pain, so to buy her some drawing pens, the kind that you buy on their own with detachable lids, I took her with me in the car, but I went into the store and I bought them for her. I came out and handed 4 of them to her. They were on their own and unpackaged. In the store, I had noticed the lids weren't great, and as she was looking at them in the car while I was driving, 2 of the lids fell into the footwell where she was sitting in the passenger seat of my car. I saw this out of the corner of my eye, and we decided to finish driving home, and then we would get the lids to put them back on. So we get home, and I get out to take something out of the back seat, and there's one of the lids on the back seat. There's no logical way that this could have happened, unless the lid rolled and then bounced up to get into the seat. But I feel that it would have taken a lot of bumps for the lid to get from the floor to the seat. The other lid was still in the front passenger footwell. It left us both puzzled, and as these are special pens, it was definitely the lid for that exact pen. So that, my friends, was this week's Glitch in the Matrix collection. A collection of stories that are strange, weird, and diabolically odd. Stories that show how messed up our reality can be. Strange stories, glitch stories, you know what they are. By this time, if you're on this channel, you've probably heard 1 or 2 of these stories. I've only done this 153 times now. So odds are you know what a Glitch in the Matrix story is, because I've done way too many of them. Yeah. Some good stories today. Some weird ones, as always. Some of them a bit creepy, and some of them a bit strange and entertaining. Interesting, I guess. Intriguing is a better word for that. There was a bit of connection in some of these stories, interestingly enough. I told you guys that always seems to happen. Even though I'm not trying to put stories in videos that are connected, there's a few stories in this video that have things that are similar, which is weird. Because again, my selections are semi-random whenever I put them in a video. Yeah. Anyways, hopefully you all enjoyed this collection of Glitch in the Matrix stories. If you did, please do hit that thumbs up button. If you like what you heard, please do consider subscribing, as that does help the channel tremendously. This is not me complaining, this is me just saying that growth in numbers have been low and slow on YouTube. That's in general, not just my channel, apparently. So anything you guys can do to help the video, liking, subscribing, commenting, which we'll get to in a minute, and sharing it, it helps a lot. None of that's ever expected, but if you do it, just know it is appreciated. You can also join Patreon memberships for early access to content like this and other stuff depending on what you sign up for and how you sign up. You can also do a super thanks, which is just a tip to the channel, a bit of support. Again, never expected, always appreciated. The other thing you can do is leave me a comment with what we call the word of the week, or the wow, if you will. The W-O in parenthesis T-W, wow. These videos have that wow factor, apparently. I don't know. I'm just spitballing random ideas that don't make any sense and won't stick anyways. Anyways, on the screen now and prior to now, there is an image, screenshots of all the comments that were left to me last week with the word of the week. Yeah. Several of you, a good number of you, left comments with the word, and they're on the screen, as I said. And a huge thank you to every single one of you. Sorry, I'm distracted. There's a fly in here, and it's distracting me really bad. Don't look at it. Yeah, so a lot of you left comments on the screen now, so a huge thank you to each and every single one of you who did leave me a comment with last week's Word of the Week. Y'all are amazing. More amazing than you know. Now, this week the Word of the Week is one that you can call reliable. In fact, the word is actually reliable. R-E-L-I-A-B-L-E, which means suitable or fit to be relied on, dependable, or giving the same result on successive trials, if you're looking at the more scientific definition. Now, all that said, just leave a comment with this word of the week on this video before next Sunday, the 20th, and it'll be in the next video. All that said, friends, I hope you do have a beautiful day, and I hope I do see you again here very soon. But until then, remember, you are loved, you are valid, you are important, you're the best you that you can be. Don't forget it, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. And until I see you again, my beautiful friends, much love, and sleep well.